Hey folks, and welcome back. Now today we're going to be talking about this, the Frameworks Drider miniature. If you followed the channel for a little while, you may know that some time ago I did a review of the Frameworks Orcs, and it upset a few people. I said that the Orcs were a good deal, or at least a good price for the models that you're getting, a reasonable price. And I still like those models, and I stand by that. But that upset some people, because the Frameworks line has a reputation of being highly overpriced for what you get. So I wanted to check out another model and look into it again today and see if that holds true. The Drider model is the same hard plastic as the rest of the Frameworks line. It has some relatively high detail and a nice, crisp sculpt. There is a clear base with it and a single sheet of instructions for putting it together. Like the rest of the line, it also comes with some customization options. A sword, a spell effect, a bow and arrow, and an empty hand. It also has a choice of different heads and a couple of optional pieces like a small spider and a venom effect. I like the options they provide, and all of the unused bits are great for filling up a bits box. Some of the different goodies I had left over from the Frameworks Orcs have already been used, and I'm sure at least some of these will be too in time. The instructions are simple and easy to follow, and assembly is quick. You'll need some model clippers, a knife, and either plastic cement or superglue. The only really fiddly bits were some of the spider legs. They didn't all fit into obvious positions, which meant I had to be careful not to end up with some of them pointing all over the place in weird directions or ways that wouldn't actually fit on the base for the model when I was done. Other than that, it was just a matter of picking out the pieces I liked best. I went with the sword and the empty hand. I did consider the spell effect, but it looked a little ostentatious for my taste. It's a little too big, too attention-stealing, just too much for me. And speaking of too much, this is a good time to address the elephant in the room. While I like the customizability, and I love seeing classic D&D monsters get these more interesting, more detailed sculpts, this model was 25 Canadian dollars. That makes it one of the most expensive single miniatures I own, and almost certainly the most expensive miniature I own that's not a giant monster or something closer in size to a dragon. While the Framework Orcs were an okay deal, this is absurd, and it's models like this that cause the negative reputation of the line. Yes, the sculpting is nice and certainly way better than the standard WizKids model, but the standard WizKids Drider is about a third of the price. And that's not even getting into alternate options like Reaper or 3D printing. I could make a small army of Driders for that using my 3D printer. And yes, the quality of this one is certainly better, but there are some issues with that too, which we'll get into in a little bit. Anyway, rant over. For now. Here's the finished assembled model. What do you think? $25 worth of Drider? Let me know in the comments. I started to paint by priming in a zenithal highlight and then doing a white dry brush over top. Some of my base coats are going to be express colors, so this will help make the most of them. I started with Black Lotus over all of the spider parts. It's a very dark blue that I was hoping would read as like a shiny blue-black, but once it was on here, it just wasn't quite as dark as I wanted, so I ended up making my own mix of Black Lotus, Black Templar, and Contrast Medium to get a darker color and going over it again. This let me keep a lot of those blue highlights while getting a much darker black in the shadows, which I was a lot happier with. I really wanted to add some more color to this model and to make it look really threatening and dangerous. Not just an overgrown house spider with a drow stuck on it, but something truly frightening. To that end, I started by adding some plasma red to the tips of the spider legs. I did this while the black paint was still wet, and by making sure to end my brush strokes in a downward motion, headed toward the tips of the claws, I could make sure that's where most of the paint gets deposited, helping with the transition from black to red. After a quick Google search, I'll spare you the picture results just in case there are any arachnophobes watching, I saw that many of the most dangerous spiders in the world have patterns of red spots on their thorax and decided that was the perfect way to add an air of danger to my Drider. I make some roughly stippled dots in white, outline them in a nice shiny black, then go over them with plasma red and a black wash. This ends up being the part of the model I'm happiest with, and I think it looks genuinely cool and sells the Drider as not just some spider, but a deadly predator. It also gets the Drider away from being just a morass of dark colors with no contrast, which is a problem Driders and Drow both easily fall into. I won't lie, this is sort of where I feel like the paint job went off the rails. And while some of that is my fault, some of it definitely isn't too. I chose a brighter purple for the Drow's skin, again, trying to avoid that problem of dark colors on dark colors on dark colors. D&D already suffers from stereotyping, and while there's nothing wrong with the classics, I hate how there's an entire species of elf that has just collectively decided to dress like their favorite movie is The Crow. But I digress. The fact is, a lot of the details on the sculpt of this drow body are just not that sharp. They're a little muddy and indistinct, and not all that fun to paint. At some points, I was definitely guessing what some of the details were even supposed to be, and it ended up in a paint job I'm not really all that happy with. I got frustrated with the process, and at some point, I just decided I was done. Here's the problem with that. This is priced like a specialized, high-end boutique model. The details shouldn't be muddy. I don't mind spending some extra money to get a nicer model, once in a while, but when I do, I need the product to reflect that. And while the spider parts on this model were great and a lot of fun to paint, it feels like the drow body was just kind of phoned in. And that's ridiculous for the price they're charging. This feels like Wizards trying to have their cake and eat it too. They want to charge boutique model prices without providing a product that's on par with that quality. And I suspect that this experience is indicative of the majority of the Frameworks line, since that would perfectly explain people's anger with it. In the end, I'm not thrilled with how the model turned out, and I honestly feel like I've been left frustrated and overcharged. What doesn't leave me feeling frustrated, though, is the support of my patrons. Yeah, how was that for a segue? You like that? Seriously though, thank you so much for your support. Please hit like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, and I would especially like to thank my Terrain Tier supporter, Amanda Chisholm. Your help and support really makes this so much more rewarding and so much more viable for me, and I appreciate it so much. So thank you for watching and for supporting the channel. To further illustrate my earlier point, here is the $25 Drider next to the $10 Thing in the Well, the $10 Loot Golem, and the $15 Gem Dragon from Reaper, or even the $8 Beholder from WizKids. I understand what they're trying to do, but in this case, I just can't make the price make sense. So in the end, where do I stand on this one? I really wanted to like this model. And I sort of do. Sort of. I like the model itself. It was mostly fun to paint. The spider part, at least, was really fun. But at the end of the day, a lot of the details on the Drider, or the elf part of the Drider, were just muddy and indistinct. And you can't charge this crazy premium price for a model and not have it be a good model. I don't know whether that's by design, that is to say the design or the sculpt of the model, or if it's part of the casting process or what, but the details just aren't there on the elf part of the model. And on top of that, it's like $25 for one Drider. There's no encounter in D&D that uses one Drider either. So to actually get enough for this to be useful, you're talking, what, $100 on 4 mods? It's insane. I do like the customizability. I like the sculpt of the spider part of the model, and that was fun to paint. But at the end of the day, I have to say that while the orcs from way back when were a good or reasonable deal, and that I still really like those models, the Drider's just not in the same tier. Not of viability as far as price, and not in the same tier of sculpting. It's a much less distinct, much less interesting model with a way higher price. And until Wizards starts fixing things like this, this line of models is going to continue to have problems and going to continue to have people complaining about it. Because really, who is this for? It's not for D&D players who want a slightly more advanced model to paint, because the price is too outrageous. It's not for display painters. There are no D&D focused paint competitions that I know of, for one, and for another, I've never seen someone use these kinds of models for display painting. So it's not for that. I mean, it has customizability, so one must presume that it's meant to be used on a game table. But the price is too crazy for that. So what even is this model? Until they focus in on the question of what is this filling a gap for, who is this meant to be purchased by, and why, you're going to continue to run into these problems with this model line, where some parts of it might be worth it and some parts of it definitely are not. Until they figure out what they're doing, every product unfortunately needs to be judged individually, which also means that for a lot of people, it's simply not worth the time. If you've liked this video, please hit like and subscribe. I have more content coming in the future, and if you've really liked it, you can check out all the ways to support the channel below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.